Warhammer 40K Space Marines 2. I haven't really ever played any of these games, but my friend in Discord, Thaddeus Prime, he said I need to watch this. So let's check it out and watch it together, guys.
From the very start of my time with Space Marine 2, I was taken.
This looks good. Like, I know nothing about this game. I've never played any Warhammer games, but this looks really good. It's already giving me like Gears of War vibes.
Atmosphere and attention to detail that was being showcased. The pride and care emanating from just this snippet of the grim dark world that Saber Interactive has.
We need more good third-person shooters like Gears and things like that. So this is already looking really cool, man.
Built is palpable.
We're like 15 seconds in, and it looks great.
Newcomers to the franchise and longtime fans of Warhammer 40K. During my hands-on preview of Space Marine 2, I was given access to a couple of non-campaign PvE missions.
So it looks like there's a few mission. It looks like on that clip, it looked like there was a few like almost like cutscene type fighting scenes or something.
From around the halfway point of the story, the mission opened
like
with
animations you can't really
squad exiting
get
their
out
ship
of
onto a landing pad with an Imperial Guard staging area just beyond. Through this section, I saw an exciting glimpse of life among the.
Look at that, dude! It looks like a really cool game. It looks like a Gears game. That's what it really looks like. With like really cool abilities like you'd find in like a Mass Effect game.
War-torn Imperium. Militarum units bowing and kneeling at the sight of Space Marines. A commander delivering a rousing speech from atop an enormous Baneblade tank. A commissar delivering punishment to soldiers found guilty of cowardice. Troops burning mounds of Tyranid corpses with flamers, and so much more. This small section really drove home how much effort has gone into the game's
the pyrotechnics and explosions, dude. It looks really good.
And immediately made me think that Space Marine 2 could very well be the most authentic Warhammer 40k game we've ever seen. And since I know so many have been curious, it's an experience that you can indeed play through with or without your helmet. In my last preview, I said that Space Marine 2 really makes you feel like a Space Marine. And it's a sentiment that has only been further reinforced. But so far, this is also the first game that really makes you feel like you're in Warhammer 40k. A large part of this is thanks to the game's combat.
Yeah, the combat looks awesome. Very Gears-like, man. It definitely
demands more of you than 2011's.
I mean, it's very clear that this is very Gears-like.
Space Marine, but it also retains the same feeling of brutal, grimdark action that made the original great. This makes for a more thinking Marines hack and slash game, which works incredibly well. However, and it may be because the mission I played was set at the midpoint of the campaign, I did initially feel somewhat overwhelmed by the variety of inputs, enemies, counters, abilities, and resources that made up my first Savage melee. But after learning the language of Space Marine 2's combat, the blend of
looks like an animation like you can use in a fight
quickly became much more fluid
and you got
and
freaking
so satisfyingly brutal.
Dude, you got you look like Boba Fett right there, dude. Oh, and a nosedive? Oh, that's going to be fun.
Wide swings of a chainsword can cleave through compacted hordes of surrounding Tyranids, while parries, dodges, counters, and gun strikes add complexity and are vital if you want to emerge from each bloody maelstrom unscathed.
Yeah, I mean, the combat looks pretty fluid, other than like there's a few like animations you can't really get out of.
A larger foe's combo,
I mean, that adds to like the
attack.
Like the
experience. Attacks are denoted by a red circle and must be dodged with a quick backstep or full-on combat roll.
The dodging mechanic too.
Dodges or parries can open up.
This looks like Gears, but Warhammer, dude. Honestly.
Enemies to a gun strike, which is a counter that delivers a devastating pistol shot at close range. Lighter enemy attacks won't give you the same warning, but after an hour or so of battle, I found myself able to instinctively react to those moves too. It was at this point when Space Marine 2's flow of combat began to almost remind me of Sekiro, albeit with a chainsword swinging superhuman from the far future rather than a katana wielding shinobi. Chaining together attacks, parries, and dodges will quickly leave enemies exposed and vulnerable to execution.
The combat looks super fluid when you're watching this gameplay. It looks really fluid.
Killing blows that the Space Marine 2 team has obviously delighted in crafting. Each execution seemed more visceral and satisfying than the last, from tearing limbs off of Tyranid warriors to ripping apart the sealed power armor of the traitorous Thousand Sons.
Dude. Just ripped his head
Executions are
off.
also vital to the flow of combat, as each one will refill a portion of your armor. Previously, in the original Space Marine, executions would heal you, but this time health is returned through the use of consumable stims that must be found throughout the level,
So
forcing
stims,
you to be more
okay.
mindful of your resources even as you charge into the fray. There is also much more strategy to be found in Space Marine 2's combat. A horde of Tyranids with varying enemy types
Strategy,
can offer both
man.
different
My strategy is
challenges
just
and
blow it up.
opportunities.
Like
Do you
that.
strike at the smaller mobs to thin the horde and give you more room to maneuver, or do you weather their blows and focus on the larger warrior enemies with the goal of cutting their synaptic link and in turn taking down surrounding lesser Tyranids? There may also be ranged enemy types to consider, firing strangling thorns that can slow movement or apply poison, or
Dang,
even
dude.
hovering zoanthropes
This looks
buffing
intense.
nearby creatures with a psychic link, requiring you to break from the immediate close quarters battle to close the distance or engage these Xenos with ranged firepower. While I only saw a portion of the combat that Space Marine 2 has to offer, the brutal ballet of battle only grew more varied and more satisfying across the demo. As I made my way deeper into the mission, more tools and weaponry became available, such as the jump pack, which allowed me to
The
fire
jump pack.
hails of bolts from up on high and dive back
Yeah,
into
that
combat
looks
with a
freaking epic,
devastating
dude.
strike from above.
And then just
During
like,
last year's Space Marine
ching!
2 preview, there were only
With the
Tyranids
sword-
to fight.
with-
This
with the
time
sword,
around,
that
though,
looks freaking
Chaos has
awesome.
reared its ugly head, and I was able to see the Thousand Suns Chaos Space Marines in action, leading
Traitor!
to a lot of intense scenarios.
Blow it up.
One moment saw me
Boom.
enter a giant
That grenade
plaza
was
where
awesome.
Thousand Suns and their summoned demons and cultists were engaged with the Termagants, Hormagaunts, and warriors of the
You get like a
Tyranids. I believe in
shield boost
Astartes
or
would call
something
that
there?
a target-rich environment. Following that carnage, the campaign portion of my preview culminated in a boss fight with a Thousand Sun Sorcerer, which not only provided a completely different gameplay experience, but was also one heck of a visual spectacle.
Dude, you're just
As
a
he
freaking
cast
walking
spells and
tank, man.
traversed across the arena, I noticed horrific eyes emerging from the walls and ceiling of the room. Shortly after, the ground below him turned to liquid that rippled towards me and my squad. An absolutely perfect visual realization
as
of
far as
Warhammer's
like
warp
as far as like the gameplay and combat, this looks really freaking exciting.
magic. The battle was completely different to the rest of the demo I played, but these visual details, as well as the attacks and the overall design of my final foe, were another element that really drove home Space Marine 2's attention to detail and its drive to bring so many of the elements of Warhammer 40,000 to life. Finally, as a massive Warhammer fan, I couldn't help but nerd out and get excited about the visuals on display in Space Marine 2. Not only
Yeah.
were there tons of little details in the characters, armor, weapons, NPCs, and environments for Warhammer
It does
fans to
look
pick
really
apart,
cool, man.
but everything looks bloody fantastic too. From the explosions of your bolt rounds and the streaks of gore as you
This looks like they actually took time to really like put the bells and whistles in the game. It's not a game that's being released that doesn't look like unoptimized. It looks really good.
cleave an enemy in two, to the massive skies filled with flying enemies
this is just a
dank,
preview.
swampy jungle environments. Space Marine 2 is shaping up to be a feast for the eyes, albeit a brutal one.
Dang,
combines
dude.
all of
This,
these
I mean, I said it like 3 times now, but this reminds me so much of
To
Gears.
create a cohesive and authentic feeling grim-dark world. After the campaign, I also got to experience a couple of Space Marine 2's co-op missions. The operations mode takes place alongside the main story of Space Marine 2, but
See, I think that's what this is really going to shine is the co-op mode. Like being able to do things like that with your friends is just going to be awesome.
sees you play as your own customizable Astartes in a squad of 3. One of the missions,
And you can
aptly named
customize.
Decapitation, saw my squad springing a trap on a Tyranid hive tyrant, knowing that doing so would disable the Tyranid swarm that Lieutenant Titus was fighting in the same campaign mission I just completed. These replayable PvE missions being so tightly connected to the main story makes them feel much more impactful. The chatter between squads and commanders are mirrored in each mission, so you feel like you're part of the bigger picture, even when you're replaying
Dude,
them
he's
as
kinda
different
he's like
classes,
a freaking
or
knight,
taking
dude.
them on with a more casual approach as you try out new weapons or difficulties.
That's
From
what
what
I'm
I
gonna
played,
play,
the
man.
main objectives of these missions do remain largely the same through each playthrough, and each will generally take you about 30 minutes on the
Look
standard
at that
difficulty.
game,
Variety
man.
mostly comes from
Like
Space
the
Marine 2's
environment.
AI director, changing up the enemies as it responds to your class and playstyle, or even springing surprise ambushes. I was actually surprised by how varied the class system was, as each had access to a different arsenal of weapons, unique perks, abilities, and filled their own niche on the battlefield. The
Oh, and there's
tactical
perks
marine
you
is
can
your
do on that
bread
sword.
and butter Astartes, and has access to the most ranged weapons as well as a chainsword and an Auspex scan ability that both reveals enemies and makes them more vulnerable to damage. The assault class lacks any ranged weaponry beyond a pistol,
look at that
but
dude's
has
hammer.
access to the most powerful melee weapons, as well as a jump pack that allows them to take to the skies and assault groups of enemies or priority targets from above. The
That looks
Vanguard,
amazing.
meanwhile, is lightly armored and more suited for close quarters combat and focusing on single targets. With access to bolt carbines, a melter rifle, which in Space Marine 2 mostly functions like a superheated shotgun, and a grapnel launcher ability that allows them to propel themselves towards foes with a diving kick and engage with their giant dueling knives, which makes this class great for folks looking to get up close and personal with their enemies.
Too.
Bulwarks are the tank class and forego a main ranged weapon in favor of a giant shield that they wield alongside pistols and powerful melee weapons. Their special ability is to deploy a chapter banner, restoring armor to all squad members nearby.
This
makes them perfect at
restoring
clearing
the arm,
hordes,
like
staying in
he's
the thick of the
reviving and
fight,
restores.
and soaking up enemy damage. Snipers are, you guessed it, equipped with a selection of long-ranged weapons such as the Bolt Sniper and Las Fusil. They're great at starting off fights with a couple of long-ranged headshots into elite enemies, and their camo cloak ability allows them to turn invisible for a period of time, which is useful for breaking contact, flanking, and picking off
like a
pesky
double
ranged
knife
enemies.
too.
Lastly,
when
the
they get
heavy
close?
class wields the big guns like the Heavy Bolter,
Oh
Heavy
my
Plasma
gosh,
Incinerator,
dude.
or Multi-Melter. Their weapons are so heavy that they don't actually get access to a melee weapon, instead having to swing their guns into the jaws of foes or deliver brutal kicks to an enemy's body. They are, however, the best at clearing hordes from range and delivering
like so
heavy
satisfying
firepower.
as far as
With their Iron
combat and
Halo
like,
ability,
like the different types of gameplay you can do and different types of styles.
creating a barrier that can block incoming ranged damage, allowing you to keep your finger on the trigger. All of these classes are cosmetically customizable, although from my time with the game, I feel as though it takes a little too long to earn some basic customization options. For example, if you want to buy the color Caliban Green to swap your chapter to Dark Angels as I did, you first have to use your well-earned credits to buy the chapter icon, and only then can you obtain the color. However, the credits you use for hot new paint jobs are also required for purchasing class and weapon perks as you work to progress through their respective trees,
Yeah, I can see how that
making
can
this
get
currency
bothersome.
even more precious. Obviously, this was a preview build, so numbers may be tweaked and there may be other methods
hammer
to
looks
earn
freaking
said credits in the
amazing.
final release, but it did cause some concern over how much grinding may be required to craft your Astartes to your taste.
I mean, you get a game that has customization like this and basically has the co-op element to it. You're going to have some grind to it. That's just the way they make the games like that now. That was pretty
Overall,
rad, dude.
Space Marine 2 is shaping up to be a more than worthy successor to the 2011 fan favorite. Everything that made the original Space Marine great is still here, but as a more considered and evolved version of itself, all of which comes together to make Space Marine 2 feel like both a familiar old friend and an exciting new experience. Space Marine 2's release date of September 9th is now just a few weeks away.
Dude, look
and
at that
while there are a
headshots.
few elements that we've yet to see, such as the PvP mode Eternal War, there are already a lot of reasons for gamers and Warhammer fans to be excited about Space Marine 2. As someone who has been a huge 40K fan for over half of his life, I have never been more excited about a Warhammer video game.
It looks amazing, man. It looks really, really freaking cool, dude. Like, I mean, I'm definitely going to give this game a try. The combat looks too fun not to try it, right? It just looks too fun. You guys let me know in the comments below what you think.
Make sure to like and subscribe, or we will execute Order 66. Check out our other videos on the screen as well.
Yes, my lord.